path to the Dhruva planet. Grinate, on being prayed for. Prasannaha, being satisfied. Divya, denizens of higher planets. Stuvanti, to pray. Munaya, great sages. Yat, thereupon. Upari, up. Adashtat, down. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Being insulted by sharp words spoken by the co-wife of the king, even in his presence, Prince Dhruva, though only a boy, took to severe penances in the forest, and the Lord, being satisfied by his prayer, awarded him the Dhruva planet, which is worshipped by great sages both upward and downward. Please repeat. Being insulted by sharp words, spoken by the co-wife of the king, even in his presence, Prince Dhruva, though only a boy, took to severe penances in the forest. And the Lord, being satisfied by his prayer, awarded him the Dhruva planet, which is worshipped by great sages, both upward and downward. Purport. When he was only 5 years old, Prince Dhruva, a great devotee and the son of Maharaj Uddanapad, was sitting on the lap of his father. His stepmother did not like the king's patting her stepson, so she dragged him out, saying that he could not claim to sit on the lap of the king because he was not born out of her womb. The little boy felt insulted by this act of his stepmother, nor did his father make any protest, for he was too attached to his second wife. After this incident, Prince Dhruva went to his own mother and complained. His real mother also could not take any step against this insulting behavior, and so she wept. The boy inquired from his mother how he could sit on the royal throne of his father, and the poor queen replied that only the Lord could help him. The boy inquired where the Lord could be seen, and the queen replied that it is said that the Lord is sometimes seen by great sages in the dense forest. The child prince decided to go into the forest to perform severe penances in order to achieve his objective. Prince Dhruva performed a stringent type of penance under the instruction of his spiritual master, Sri Narad Muni, who was specifically deputed for the purpose by the personality of Godhead. Prince Dhruva was initiated by Narad into chanting the hymn composed of 18 letters, namely, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And Lord Vasudeva incarnated himself as Prishnigarbha, the personality of Godhead, with 4 hands, and awarded this prince a specific planet above the 7 stars. Prince Dhruva, after achieving success in his undertakings, saw the Lord face to face, and he was satisfied that all his needs were fulfilled. The planet awarded to Prince Dhruva Maharaj is a fixed Vaikuntha planet installed in the material atmosphere by the will of the Supreme Lord, Vasudeva. This planet, although within the material world, will not be annihilated at the time of devastation, but will remain fixed in its place. And because it is a Vaikuntha planet never to be annihilated, it is worshipped even by the denizens of the 7 stars situated below the Dhruva planet, as well as by the planets which are even above the Dhruva planet. Maharshi Bhrigu's planet is situated above the Dhruva planet. So the Lord incarnated himself as Prishnigarba just to satisfy a pure devotee of the Lord. And Prince Dhruva achieved this perfection simply by chanting the hymn mentioned above after being initiated by another pure devotee, Narada. A serious personality can thus achieve the highest perfection of meeting the Lord and attain his objective simply by being guided by a pure devotee, who automatically approaches by dint of one's serious determination to meet the Lord by all means. The description of Prince Dhruva's activities can be read in detail in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. The Srimad Bhagavatam begins with stating that this scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam, is only to do with pure devotional service. It kicks out all kinds of materially motivated religion and gives the eternal benefit of pure love of Godhead to the serious student. So it could be asked then, why is the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj given here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, when he was seemingly motivated by the desire to have a kingdom bigger than his father and even bigger than his grandfather, which is Lord Brahma himself. And one reason is to show the glory of devotional service, and that if one is actually trying to approach the Supreme Lord, if one is actually interested to meet the Supreme Lord, then the other parts of the desire, the other parts of what's going on are very much secondary. They're not important. Actually, the point is how to approach the Supreme Lord. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, earlier in this canto actually, this verse is given: Akama savakama va mokshukama odaradi tivrena bhakti yogina yajita purushaparam. The famous verse that a person who has broader intelligence, whether he's be full of all material desires, without any material desire or desired liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. In the purport to that verse, a very famous verse, Prabhupada says, it's the last line of the purport: as the unmixed sun ray is very forceful and is therefore called Tivra, similarly unmixed bhakti yoga of hearing, chanting, etc. may be performed by one and all regardless of inner motive. So I find this very, very amazing actually to think about it, and how this verse and Srila Prabhupada is really separating the pure practice of bhakti yoga from anything else, and saying that it can be performed by one and all regardless of whatever motive. So the fact that what Dhruva Maharaj did is very different to someone going to a church or approaching someone saying, you know, God, please give me this material thing, and basically putting God to the back and saying, I'm not interested in God, I'm just interested in this material thing. And what Dhruva Maharaj did was he had a desire for this material thing, a big kingdom. But then his mother, his initial guru said, go to the forest, only God can give you that. So he said, all right, I have to meet God then. So then how do I meet God? We'll go to the forest. When he went to the forest, because of his sincerity to actually meet God, the guru came. What is it? Guru Krishna Kripaya Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. The guru was sent by Krishna's arrangement because he wanted to meet God. Why he wanted to meet God in the beginning, as Prabhupada says here, is it's not so important, but he actually wanted to meet God. So that's very different from someone just focusing on a material thing. I want this material thing, I want this material thing. He entered with that desire, but then it transformed because he was actually approaching. And then when the guru came, then he became very sincere. So although he had this big material desire, he became very sincere. And he chanted this mantra so sincerely, as we can read the detail in the 4th canto, that he started just like, only eating fruits, and then only eating leaves, and then only water, and then only breathing, and then not breathing, and not only performing great austerities and sincerity, but also chanting the holy name, chanting the mantra that was given by his guru. So by practicing this process, he actually came closer to God. He actually came closer to Lord Vishnu. And when he eventually got the actual darshan of Lord Vishnu, then he said, I was searching after some broken pieces of glass, and now I've actually found this wonderful diamond. We can meditate on that. At least I meditate on this, is that the essence of our process is how to approach Krishna, how to chant the holy name purely, how to approach Krishna with sincerity, and all the other things will naturally fall away. This is whole pastime is explaining this in so many different ways. So some of the other lessons, or some of the insights that we can get from, or at least I get from this, is to think about this pastime in a sense of how it happened in the beginning, of why the co-wife, or the wife of Uttanapad was cursing Dhruva Maharaj. We can also learn from that, I think. So her name was Suruchi, and she basically, felt, my son should be the one worshipped. My son should be in the front. Why this other son is getting there? No, get him off. But actually, this wasn't very intelligent. It wasn't very accurate. It wasn't very real. The functions of the mind are described as thinking, feeling, and willing. So the mind thinks about something. By thinking about it, then the mind starts to feel that, start to actually experience that. Thinking about the ice cream, this, that, and then start to feel, what would it feel like to eat the ice cream? And then let me go and buy an ice cream. So the mind, and another way Krishna describes that, of course, in those famous verses, I think 2nd chapter Bhagavad Gita, Jayato Vishayam Pumsa Sangas Teshu Vijayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Krodo Vijayate, etc., etc. So it all begins from contemplation, it all begins from thinking. And the mind is thinking about things, and then by constantly thinking, then it starts to actually feel. It actually starts to feel. Of course, in the Vedic description of the elements, Krishna says, Bhumi apanulove kamano buddhevacha ahankara. So he gives that mind, intelligence, false ego. But in our Western way, you could also translate that word mind or mana as being thinking and emotion. Emotions, how we feel. because that description is given there. Thinking, feeling and willing. This is the functions of the mind. So Krishna gives this actually in the last verse of our third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that one has to control the mind with deliberate spiritual intelligence. So the mind will think about different things, then it'll feel this, and then it'll will to do something. But the intelligence is meant to regulate the mind. It's meant with deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna says. So that has to happen at the thinking stage, right? It has to happen at the thinking stage. Once the feeling stage is going, and then the willing stage, then the soul is just carried away, whatever it is. But at the thinking stage, it's possible to catch the mind and think about things in a different way, right? So that's why, sometimes it's said, at least I've heard recently on some videos and podcasts on the internet, that, well, don't tell me about slokas. I want to hear what's in your heart and things like that. And obviously that is a very wonderful sentiment. It's the truth actually. It's the heart of the pure devotee that changes us. It is a fact. It is true. I would also say that to study the philosophy, to study the slokas, is extremely important when we're in this conditioned stage. And it's especially important for this particular reason in our application of Bhakti Yoga, that our mind is constantly going to be thinking about things. That thinking will move into feeling and getting emotional about that thing, and then that will move into a willing to act. And if at the point of thinking we're able to have different perspectives, different viewpoints on the issue at hand, then we can modify the feeling. We can modify which direction we start to feel, right? Just if you hear something and then somebody tells you a different point of view, suddenly you feel differently about it, right? It's natural. I think something about someone, I think situations like this, then somebody else who was there knows, oh, yeah, but you don't know about this also happened, right? And then we feel differently. So we're thinking a certain way, we're feeling a different way, So it's very important to consider both sides of the issue before we let the mind get to the feeling stage and get all emotional about the thing, right? One devotee called Danya Riko, she recently made a very nice comment, a very nice explanation on I think it was Namrasa podcast, about how social media is actually designed to inflame the negative emotions of the person who's reading it. And actually the feed in social media is different for everyone, because what it's actually doing is trying to get you emotionally invested in things. And whatever you get emotionally invested, then it keeps showing you those to try to keep you onto the platform. If we analyze this in terms of this Vedic view, we can see that what Krishna is telling us to do, to think about things and then moderate that thinking with deliberate spiritual intelligence before we get to the level of feeling and getting all fired up and invested and then act. Krishna is telling us to do that. We can see that the social media algorithms are trying to bypass that. I'm not saying suggesting it's a definite conspiracy and whatever, but it's just a fact of that is a company designed to keep you looking at the advertising that's there, and they make money, and it's all about making money, and that's how they make money, is to keep you. So it is obviously entirely an intelligent decision, but this is actually, in a way, is doing directly the opposite of this instruction. I'm not really disturbed by that because I'm used to it, but is everybody else? Is anybody else disturbed by that? Is it all right? It's a little bit distracting. Maybe he can go and play outside the room. So, if we think about this, and in this pastime, what happened with this Suruchi was that she didn't take the time to keep her mind in that function of thinking. She went straight to feeling. I don't like this, I don't want this to happen, then willing. No, you can't do that. Straight from thinking, straight to willing. Straight to feeling. But if she was, working in that level, she could think about, well, hang on a sec, there's also another wife, she has a son, he has every right, in fact, I'm pretty sure Dhruva Maharaj was the elder son, he has the right to sit on his father's lap, even though I feel this still, I should, it doesn't feel very nice, but still I should realize. So if she was able to keep the mind in the thinking stage, then all of this, may not have happened. She may have been able to control herself. So it's a very, Bhakti Yoga is a very actually practical process. It's a very, very practical thing. It's not a religion where it's like, you believe or you don't believe. You're in or you're out. Krishna says, Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam. It's something that you directly perceive, and you can directly perceive your mind how it's working like this. It's thinking about certain things, then it's getting attached to certain things, you feel the emotion of it, and then you will, this has to be done, this has to be done. So it's a very, very practical thing, and to really take advantage of Bhakti Yoga, then we can really take advantage if we study these different aspects of how the mind is working, of how the soul, how the desire to be the enjoyer in the material world, all of these things, how they're working. We can watch ourselves. We can watch our own mind. We can see it's working. And yes, exactly what Krishna and all the acharyas are describing is exactly how our own intelligence, our own mind is working. And then we can understand things. We can become liberated from the influence of the material energy to more degree. Now this principle becomes, sort of very, very important in the association of devotees. And that's because if one performs some kind of violence or negative action or even thought against another living entity, then there are reactions, obviously. But if those reactions are generally under the auspices of the material energy, you just like in the Vedas, you kill an animal to eat it, you have to whisper in the animal's ear, I'm killing you, but I offer that my body in the future, I'll take an animal body and you can kill me. There's a mantra that you chant. So under the material energy, these reactions are going on. But if we perform some violent action in words or deeds towards devotees who are engaged in Krishna's service, then Krishna personally doesn't like that. He's personally offended, and therefore it can be extremely spiritually detrimental for our development of love for Krishna, to do something that Krishna specifically really finds offensive and doesn't like. So this principle of thinking, feeling, willing, and deliberate spiritual intelligence becomes even more important in the association of devotees. And actually, if we read the fourth canto where the whole pastime is laid out, when Lord Vishnu actually came to Dhruva Maharaj, he said to her, your brother, the one who was allowed to sit on the thing, he's actually going to be killed in a hunting accident, and his mother will go and she'll be killed due to lamentation in a forest fire, chasing after him. Very, very heavy reaction. These this is the reality of the Vedic viewpoint, and Krishna doesn't accept, other viewpoints of, we have to tell our own truth and whatever the modern justification for these things are, it's irrelevant to Krishna. Krishna doesn't like that his devotees are offended, and there's reactions for that, and reactions for everyone. Obviously, whatever position they're in. So that's another thing I think we can take out of this pastime, to see how her actions in not controlling her mind, not having spiritual intelligence, not being able to see different perspectives. That's my perspective, but there's another way. Well, she has that perspective. Not being able to see the different perspective turned out very badly for the person involved, for Suruchi. There's another aspect, I think, of Dhruva Maharaj's pastime that I'd like to bring up. Maybe this is the last aspect that I think is very instructive. That when Dhruva Maharaj, he was leaving for Vaikuntha, so he was given this planet, and he attained love for Krishna. Lord Vishnu came, but he also got his material desire, given by the Lord. The Lord wanted to bless him. It's just incredible. But after all of that, then finally he was going back to Godhead, and he was just about to board the plane. It said that he stood on the head of death. He just stood on the head of death and went to hop in the aeroplane to Vaikuntha. And it said that just as he was hopping on, he paused for a minute and he turned to the Vishnu Dutas, the ones who had taken him, and said, "Well, hang on, I can't live without my mother. She sent me on this path of finding the Lord. How can I leave her in this material world?" And then they indicated, no, she was also going on the plane back to Godhead as well. And then he was happy to go. So this is actually an instance of gratitude, that he was so grateful towards his mother. His mother had made that statement, "You should go to the forest." Everything that happened, and obviously she was his mother as well. She gave him the body, So he was so grateful. He had gratitude. And if we look in the 64 qualities of Krishna, of which the living entities have 55 of those qualities, obviously not in an unlimited quantity, but the qualities are there. The gratitude is actually listed there as quality number 17. And therefore we can understand that being grateful, gratitude is actually a quality of the soul. It's actually a quality inherent in our very selves, in our very deepest who we are. And therefore, we that element of gratitude has to be there, or we're actually going away from our eternal nature as a soul if we don't have gratitude. The pure devotees have gratitude to those who have helped them. This is also related to that issue of stopping the mind of thinking, stopping the mind of thinking and being able to see different perspectives. Being able to see different perspectives. This is my perspective, there's another perspective. And I thought it's relevant to today and to everything that's going on to learn from this pastime and to learn from the gratitude, to learn from this that how there are two different ways to see things, and that gratitude has to always be there. I just wanted to read something from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And we know that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was living in India in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and obviously was fully aware of everything that was happening in India as far as the British coming and taking over, and they were trying to, they had an organized program to decrease the faith of Indian people in their own religion. He was working with them. He knew exactly what was going on. But I just want to quote something that he wrote in his Sajjana Toshini newspaper. I think it's around 1870, I don't know the exact date. But he called it a Mangala Charan, and he glorified Lord Shri Krishna in Vrindavan, he glorified Lord Chaitanya, and then the third stanza he says this. He says, "May our present ruler, Queen Victoria, reign in Bharat with a composed body and untroubled mind. Under her rule we continue to relish and propagate pure Vaishnava Dharma without any hindrance." So he was very aware of the negative influence and the exploitative mentality of the rulers of India of the time. That is there. That is fact. That is truth. The other side of that is that he felt gratitude that they were looking after the management of the place, and he could actually go on and do his bhajan. There's a longer he expands on this in another place where he basically says that the Indians and the English are both Aryan people. The Indians are sort of the older brother. They've got a bit old, and they're a bit weak. So the younger brother has come up and is managing the place for them, and they should give some help wherever they can, and they should respect the decisions of the younger brother because he's managing the place. Like this, he was talking about that. So that doesn't take away from the bad things. They're both there. It's just like in anybody. There's some negative, there's some positive. So this is, I think, a good example that wherever we are, we have to maintain that clear vision. What's the reality of how people in power and so forth are prone to be corrupted, how they may not have all pure motive, and at the same time keep that idea of the charyas of gratitude, that wow, they're actually making, we drive down the road, who put that road there? We didn't put it. Somebody put the road there, and then you go and turn the tap on, and there's all these people, living entities, running around doing all. What to speak of Australia? It's like paradise here, compared to other parts of the world. But anywhere there's people who are looking after things, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, so that we can do our bhajan, so that we can go on. And of course we're not blind. We're not blind to that. We understand they're not pure devotees, but at the same time we have to have that gratitude to them. It's a balance. It's both together. And I'll just finish on this one little pastime on this point that exemplifies it. Is when Srila Sanatana Goswami was wanting to give up his service with the Nawab. He was sitting with so many Brahmins, about 20 Brahmins. They were all sitting discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. And when the Nawab came into that assembly to try and get Sanatana Goswami to come back and take up his government post, then all of those Brahmanas stood up. And Srila Prabhupada writes in this purport that although Nawab Hussain Shah was a Malecha Yavana, he was a meat eater, he was a cow killer, he was nonetheless the governor of the country, and the learned scholars and Sanatana Goswami offered him all the respect due a king or a governor. Excuse me. When a person occupies an exalted executive post, one should consider that he has acquired the grace of the Lord. Whenever we see something exalted, we must consider it part of the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A powerful man, vibhuti-mat sattvam, is one who has obtained the grace of the Lord or has derived some power from him. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Tejas tejasvinam aham, I am the power of the powerful. The learned Brahmin scholars showed respect to Nawab Hussain Shah because he represented a fraction of Krishna's power. This is something that I feel we can learn from this pastime, is how the function of the mind is thinking, feeling, willing. At that thinking stage, before we get into being all emotional about things, we can actually look at all the different perspectives through the eyes of Shastra. We can see For example, if we're looking at the government, we can say, yes, all leaders in Kali Yuga are corrupt and degraded and trained thieves and rogues and everything. Yes, yes, that is a fact. And what's our other... Okay, we're thinking, what's the opposite of that? What's the opposite side of that? Well, the opposite side of that would be that because they're in some power, Krishna's potency of power, that fraction of Krishna's potency is in them, so that we respect, that we give respect. And we give gratitude for what they're doing, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. So both are there. And then if we have both sides of any issue, whether it's like a medical community, like, okay, there's this problem with what they're doing, but at the same time, they're doing something that helps. So many devotees had operations and helped them to continue in their devotion. So if we see both sides at that level of thinking, then we won't get carried away with just one side of things, and possibly commit spiritual offences, and even possibly just on a level of humanity, just become an unbalanced sort of person. We should try for that balance. I think this is, nicely, if we meditate on these pastimes, many of these things are discussed and come out of this. So some time for questions. Thank you very much for coming for class. Is there any question? Okay. Krishna reply. Is there a mic? We don't have Krishna Kirtan there. Do you want to take this mic? Here, take this one. Go, Bob, take it. Hang on a sec, I've got it off. 1 sec. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the class, Prabhu. I really love some of the points that you were making about that idea of gratitude, because it's so easy to focus on the negative. It's so easy to focus on the negative of things, that I was saying, looking at the glass half full instead of half empty. And it was really very interesting how Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it was a really interesting example that you gave, how he was acknowledging the Queen's patronage, I guess you could say, in governing the country. We know how the British Raj did terrible things in India, but he had that positive notion, which was very nice. Yes, that perspective. And when you were describing about Dhruva Maharaj, when he was standing on the head of death and about to step onto the chariot, in that particular purport, there's a really deeply profound comment that Srila Prabhupada says. And he says that, I may be, and this is almost a verbatim quote because I read it so many times, I loved it so much. He said, I'm crippled in so many ways, but if I can make one disciple like Dhruva Maharaj, he can take me back to Vaikuntha. And when I read that, I actually cried, because it was such a profound indication of Prabhupada's deep humility. And I was talking about that verse to one of my god sisters. This is going back a couple of years now. And she was saying, yes, I was just reading, I forget what the source was, but she said, I was just reading how Prema Bhakti can only be present when there's deep humility. So the praying goes hand in hand with the humility. And that speaking back to that point that Prabhupada made, was very, very wonderful and really deeply moved me. That Prabhupada, he's our most glorious Pranamacharya, the most pure devotee of the Lord, that he would actually say, I may be crippled in so many ways. It was very, very wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. Any other question or point? just on that point comes to mind that humility means to real humility. This is said actually, that verse, Yasyasti Bhakti Bhagavati Kinchana, that only a pure devotee, only a devotee, a real devotee can have actual good qualities. And humility, just on that point, is it's not a, as Prabhupada said, artificial imposition on the mind. It's not about the mind saying, oh, I'm very small, I'm nothing, whatever. No, it's about somebody having contact with the greatest personality, Krishna, the Lord, God. When someone actually has some relationship with God, then immediately they feel how small they are. Then that's why the pure devotees are at the same time the most bold and fearless and everything, at the same time the most humble, because they're actually connected to God. And because in our conditioned state we don't have that connection, then we think, I'm powerful, I can pick up this flower, I can do whatever, because we're disconnected from the real powerful person. That's one thing that came to mind. And another thing that came to mind when you're saying was, one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada once, how is it that you can act as a guru, act as somebody guiding and giving so many instructions, but at the same time be humble? Is a similar point, right? And Srila Prabhupada gave an amazing example there. He says, just like if you're walking along the road, you walk in a line and someone falls, slips over and falls, you're naturally inclined to just help them up. So that's how he described it. So it's like, oh, you've fallen down, I'm just helping you up. If you're all walking, like you have a platoon of Marines or something, or somebody falls, oh, help him up, on a slippery slope, and then half an hour later someone else falls. They don't think, oh, I'm helping you up, I'm the whatever. It's just, oh, you slipped, I help. So a wonderful example. I felt that really clarified that point, about that point of humility and how Prabhupada's acting as a guru. And he said, oh, I'm just, somebody slips over, you help them up, kind of thing.
And that's an amazing example.
Yeah.
Sometimes we read the songs of the acharyas, in our songbooks, and they talk about, oh, I'm drunk from the cup of poison.
Yeah.
I'm this, I have no good quality, and they're not just like, speaking to your point, they're not just saying that. It's real, genuine humility, because they've seen God, they've seen Krishna.
I think, there's a lot of sort of controversy sometimes about this issue about, whether this soul came from the Leela or did not, or things like that. And sometimes I think that the real thing to be careful of about that whole issue, do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. The real thing to be careful about that whole issue is whether or not we have that feeling, because that's what, when you read the songbooks, that's what the acharyas are feeling. Krishna, I've left you. Oh my God, I've turned away, I've drunk this poison, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that, I want to come back to you, that deep feeling. So whatever the understanding that comes, if that understanding doesn't include that, then I think that's clearly we're missing something of, like you said, the acharyas, they're not just saying that, they're feeling it. It's not just like, it wasn't someone else's fault that I'm here. It's mine. I came here. I decided, and I have to. So that's a problem. That can be a problem if our understanding means that, oh, it was somebody else. Somebody else put me here. That's not the acharya's understanding, from what I see. So, same idea, They're saying, Anyway. So I don't know what emotional that is. Thank you. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.